Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. We have been working our way now for a couple of months through the book of Jeremiah.
We have.
And we have just a few sections left to go, right?
Yeah, so we're actually at the point where Jerusalem has been overrun by the Babylonian army led by King Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know that he led the last thing, but
he sent his guys.
Yeah, he sent his
He's
guys.
Still in charge in Babylon.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And last week we kind of had a little side show going on here. There's a group of nomads that were living. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Living outside of Jerusalem. I was like trying to figure out what I said wrong. And their ancestors defined how they should live.
Well, they're not even Jewish, right?
Yeah, no, not even Jewish, but no wine, don't live in houses, be nomads, blah, blah, blah. So,
And they've been doing it for centuries.
yeah, centuries. And now King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian army are bothering them, so they come into Jerusalem for some protection.
Yep.
Yeah, I take it you read the story completely different than I did, but
No. I mean, it's just.
yeah, kind of mind-boggling,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and the thing that gets me, they're not Jewish. They're living within the land of Israel, and if you trace their family tree back, they're basically like Moses' in-laws.
Yeah.
And now it's gone. The family tree
all the way down,
and
now-
they're still parked there in South Israel.
Yeah, which isn't that big, but
Yeah, I know.
so maybe they've had some dealings. It doesn't really show, and I'm not sure because Jeremiah didn't seem to really know anything about him because he offers them wine, and they're like, "We don't drink wine."
Yeah, I think that
Maybe it was just a test.
was a test.
Oh, because God said, "Offer them wine."
right.
True.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, the whole deal is God said, "Look at my people. All they do is ignore my rules.
Right.
Look at these people. All they do is follow the rules.
Follow the family rule.
Right.
Yeah.
So he used it just like he did the figs, the blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Name them all. Right.
Name 'em all.
The yoke. And he used it as an example. And in Jerusalem, there's going to be destruction.
Yeah.
And then for this group of nomads, they are going to be. What was the wording? There will never be a time where there's not one of the sons taking care of God, or serving God.
Serving God,
That was it,
yeah.
serving God, which was a great in there.
So this week we come to chapters 40 through 44, which takes us into a historical narrative. This is like reading a history book almost, reading a historical account of what's
But
going
yet
on.
there's some action in there too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And individual people are called out versus groups of people, right? So it's exciting.
It is exciting, but it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're going to read
There's not a lot of theology.
Yeah,
in there,
there's
right?
not a lot of theology. It's not like all this deep prophecy. It's not even really a ton of a little bit of repetition. But it's like, here's what happened, and there it was. I mean, it's a pretty straight reading this time.
Well, I keep going back to Jerusalem was under siege for 2 years at least. I think it was 2 years. I mean, there was no food.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar breaks through. You're on your own.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody in Jerusalem is either going to be taken away or die. Very few people, and we talk about few people who are able to come back and do things. Definitely the minority in there. And I mean, this is a real event that took place. But how scared would you be in there?
But Jeremiah has been telling them repeatedly.
Oh, no, I get that. Yeah.
Go to Babylon. You will be protected there. You will be safe there. Don't fight back. So what do they do?
Oh, right. He does. Yeah, right. They do the exact opposite. And then as soon as they break through the wall that night, the army and the king take off.
Yeah.
Right. And of course they get captured, and that comes later.
Right.
So Jeremiah also gets captured, right?
Yes.
And he gets captured by the captain of the guard.
Yeah, the captain of the secret police or whatever.
And he's really nice to Jeremiah.
Yeah. So Nebuchadnezzar,
something happened.
We've already seen that Nebuchadnezzar has commanded,
Yep.
don't hurt Jeremiah.
Right.
Right? God is showing his favor on the prophet. Nebuchadnezzar, don't hurt him. You take special care of him. So the captain of the guard says, you come with me.
Yeah, you come with me. What do you want to do? I mean, he's not ordering him around.
Right.
He's not trying to get information out of him.
Yep.
He's, and obviously he's been prepped. He had to be prepped by King Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
And then he's actually making suggestions. What if you stayed here? Or what if you...
Well, he's like, you want to come back to Babylon with me? No, I really don't. Okay, then here's where you should go.
Yeah.
You know?
And where does he tell him to go?
Well, Nebuchadnezzar has installed a governor.
Right.
Who is
because
loyal
the
to
king
him.
that he installed turned on him, which is why you attacked in the first place. So now let's try a governor.
Let's try a different guy. So here's the governor, and Jeremiah is told, you know what? You're going to be safe. If you're not going to come to Babylon, at least stay within the Babylon, embassy or whatever in Jerusalem.
Right.
It's not even in Jerusalem. It's outside of Jerusalem. And stay there.
Right.
And Jeremiah's like, can I go over here? That's fine, but here's the people you need to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, he's being cared for, protected. He's being watched out for.
Right. And you got to believe that there's going to be a subset of soldiers, and there's going to be a garrison there, and it's going to be under Babylonian control, and they are going to exert their control.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the things is the governor seems to be receptive to some Jews coming back.
Yeah.
So, of course, some people had fled, and I don't know if they're gone the full 2 years. They were out on vacation, right?
Yeah, right.
And they couldn't get back home, or if they fled.
In some of the surrounding lands, right?
Yeah, but they were able to come back.
Yeah.
But the city, right? All the, I think there's a thing in there. All the big houses were burned.
Yeah.
We know the walls were all torn down.
Yep.
There's not much left there.
Yeah, and it's really the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar didn't even want them coming into Babylon. He's like, you're really not going to help us out. You stay here.
You're going to be a drain, not a...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I'm not going to support you.
Yeah. You look like a really good farmer.
Take care of this land over here, right?
Yeah.
Build your own house back up, but basically that's all you've got. And so you've got this governor, and some of these Jews are like, so we can come back? It's like, yeah, Babylon doesn't want you. Feel free to come back.
Is this a trap?
Yeah, it's not a trap.
So they start coming back, and then there's a guy that shows up by the name of Ishmael.
Yeah.
And he seems to have a different agenda going on here.
Yeah, so you got this guy named Yohanan, right?
That's why I couldn't pronounce it.
Yeah, Yohanan. and he comes to the governor and says, there's this guy named Ishmael. He is going to assassinate you. And he's got his plan, and he's got this whole thing, and here's what's going to happen. He's going to assassinate you. And the governor's like, no, he's not. Yeah, right.
I'll be protected.
Yeah. So what happens?
He gets assassinated. Chapter 41, he's assassinated.
By Ishmael.
And some of the men and some of the Babylonian soldiers, which is going to be a big problem at some point.
So basically, Ishmael is a rebel. He's part of the Rebel Alliance. Right. Yeah. He's not a fan of the empire, right?
Right.
And so he assassinates the governor. He assassinates the soldiers. He assassinates the Babylonian soldiers. Basically, anybody who is a sympathizer with Babylon, Ishmael wants these guys gone.
And he's filling up a cistern with them.
He is literally dumping bodies into these mass graves and filling up these dry cisterns.
Right.
To the point that there's this group that comes from the north, and they just want to sacrifice in Jerusalem. Well, there's no temple. I mean, God's, there's this, whatever. So he goes out there all smiles. In fact, it says that he was pretending to cry with them. Oh, this is such a sad thing. And he kills them.
Yeah.
And, Yohanan is like, I told you. And so he goes out to chases after him.
Right, so he gets some guys and he chases after him. And some of the people that Ishmael have are sympathizers. They switch sides. and Ishmael gets away.
Yeah.
And we don't know how.
Yeah,
but,
he rescues
but he
him, yeah.
does. So now the big decision is these guys that are remaining, these sympathizers, not that they're going to get blamed that the governor was killed, but somebody's got to take the fall for it.
Yeah.
So they're like, where do we go?
Yeah.
What do we do? You know, how long is Babylon's reach?
Yeah.
So they come up with a great idea, and it is, let's ask Jeremiah. So they go to Jeremiah and they say, we should go to Egypt, right?
Right.
I mean, basically.
Right.
That's
we're
what they say.
thinking. We're thinking.
We're thinking
Egypt
we should
probably,
ask God,
right?
but let's go to.
But
yeah.
let's. We thought before we make our final decision to go
Yeah.
to Egypt, we should have you ask God, what should we do?
Well, and we will 100% follow whatever God says.
Whatever. We will
Yeah.
absolutely do whatever
So
you say.
so Jeremiah prays to God, and this isn't an instant thing, right?
No.
10 days later.
Yeah.
Jeremiah gets an answer.
Yep.
So we need to talk about that. And the answer is, don't go to Egypt. And that's not the answer they wanted to hear.
No.
Okay, so why 10 days?
Because-
I know, but why 10 days?
Because God was just they already had they already knew what they were going to do. It didn't
Yeah.
matter whether he answered them in 10 seconds or 10 weeks. 10 days later, he's like, here's the answer. They're like, yeah, that's not what we want to do.
Okay, so why even go to Jeremiah in the first place?
Because they have to they still think that what they're doing is right. And they still think that God is going to bless them. And if God comes back and says no, then they can just blame Jeremiah for giving them the wrong answer.
Which they did.
Which is exactly what they did.
Yeah.
No, of course we're supposed to go to Egypt. God wants to protect us. Jeremiah's like, how many years have I said, go to Babylon if you want to be protected. Stay here under Babylon's rule if you want to be protected. And you keep one time after another, it's proven that that's true. Right. So you come to me and say, we want to go to Egypt. Is that what God wants? I say, no. You say, yeah, but we're going to do it anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And even better, they're going to kidnap Jeremiah and take him.
Yeah. So let's take Jeremiah. Yeah. And Barak.
Yeah, Baruch. Yeah, Baruch, his friend,
Baruch,
right?
yeah, the friend.
The guy who's been
so the
writing
guy who
all
did
this-
the
yeah.
scroll and wrote it all down. So they basically kidnapped those
They
two.
kidnapped
which
them.
okay, and they take them to Egypt.
Yeah.
So now we get to Egypt, right? Yay! And God tells Jeremiah, "Hey, take these big rocks and bury them out in front of the palace."
Yeah.
And so Jeremiah does that, and God says, right where you buried those rocks, that's where King Nebuchadnezzar is going to put his throne. Because what we did for Jerusalem, what I did for Jerusalem, God, not me.
Right.
What God did for Jerusalem, he's going to do the same
Gonna
thing.
do the same thing.
Right.
Yep. And not only that, but since you did exactly what I told you not to do,
Yeah.
you're all going to be wiped out.
Right. So chapter 44, it seems like some time has passed between 43 and 44. They're now settled in Egypt.
Yep.
Kind of have a life there. And one of the things...
Which, of course, proves that God is not going to destroy them, right?
Yeah.
Because God hasn't
He
destroyed
hasn't
them.
up to that point.
Yeah.
Right. And as we know, idol worship was huge to God. He made the Big Ten list, right? The 10 Commandments, number 1, no other gods before me.
And number 2, no images.
Yeah, no images. And
It was idol worship that
got him there.
Got him
Right.
there, right? I mean, that's the thing is that how many times in Jeremiah have we read, you've been doing this idol worship, and that's why I'm going to...
Yeah. And as you said, since they've come back from this, there really hasn't been idol worship.
After the captivity,
So it kind of worked.
It did, absolutely. After the 70 years of captivity, the returns, Ezra and Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, that whole thing, Israel as a nation has sort of gone atheist, but they have not joined another god. They've not gone, and so the Orthodox are still there, and some of the liberal Jewish people, they don't believe in God at all for the most part. But they have not found another god, another religion, another
Right.
Whatever.
Well, in Egypt, they certainly did, right?
Yeah.
And there's plenty of gods to worship there. And they started worshiping other gods, worshiping idols. And Jeremiah specifically brings out the women.
Yeah.
That the women seem to be leading this here.
Yeah.
And it seems, and we'll find out maybe next week, it seems that God will take out Egypt
Yeah.
similarly to the way he took out Jerusalem.
Yeah. Well, it has been true throughout history, and the same as it continues today. Women tend to be more sensitive to spiritual things, good or bad, right? Whether it's true religion, Christianity, whether it's false religion, whatever. Women tend to be more, from a deceptive standpoint, all the way back to the garden, right? In Genesis 3, they tend to be more susceptible. And the reason is because they are more. They tend to be more sensitive to spiritual things, okay? And men tend to be lazy compared to spiritual things, and so they'll let their wives lead, they'll
follow,
wives, whatever,
right.
they'll follow, right? So what
That's
has
a good way to
happened
put it, lazy.
here is that passive is another term we've used in the past, right? So they go down to Egypt. The women are sensitive to spiritual things. They want to have spiritual things in their lives. They want to raise their children with spiritual things. So they just look at the gods around them. And the men sit back and do nothing. They're not going to lead them in worship of the true and living God. They're already rejecting him anyway. So it's like, whatever you want to do.
Right.
In fact, the wives come out and say, we are doing this with the full knowledge and the full permission of our husbands. Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yes, dear.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah's like, okay, that's wrong on so many levels.
Right.
We're not even going to get into it all.
But not only didn't they listen to him, in Jerusalem, they're certainly not listening to him here.
And now Jeremiah's message has to be, not only are you not going to get back to Jerusalem, this whole thing, just you're all going to be wiped out.
Right.
There's going to be like no remnant of you guys left to come back to Jerusalem, to come back to Israel. The people in Babylon, they'll come back. You guys, you're
Right.
done.
Right.
You're done.
Right. So we find that out next week, right?
Yeah,
And I think
and that's where it
that-
lands. Yeah, that's
yeah.
where it ends.
Yeah.
Right. Next
So
week
we
we
have
go
2
back
weeks
into
left?
some. Yeah, with 2 weeks left, and there's some prophecy next week, and then a little bit more historical context as we wrap up the books. So there's a little bit of both coming up.
But we'll see a lot more. We'll see action taken against a number of nations.
Yeah, and that's some of these prophecies. Here is what God is going to do.
Right.
But this is, it's like you said, it's action packed this week. It's a lot of stuff, but man, it's pretty harsh.
Yeah, I think it's cool. They take everything from the temple, but they're listing the things that were taken and the amount of wealth that was taken out of there, and what the Sea of Solomon is that a big basin that they had to cut in half or in quarters, right? Even to get it out of there.
We'll get into a lot of that stuff in these
cool
next
stuff
couple of
in there.
chapters.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to end
not
with a
cool,
bang.
but-
It's going to end with a bang. There's some really
with a
important
war,
stuff coming up.
All right.
So I'd like to say enjoy this week's reading. Enjoy it as history. This is truly what happened. You can really hear some frustration from God of, why do you think doing the same thing, anything is going to change? Why do you think you can just keep doing that? And I think really sort of there's one big theology thing that I would like to bring out here. That's in chapter 44, verse 12. God said, I will see to it that the Judean remnant that was determined to go and live in the land of Egypt will be destroyed. Okay? They were supposed to stay with Babylon. God had already told them what to do, and they would have been fine. But they determined that they were going to go off in this direction, and because of their actions, because of their choices, that determined their end.
Consequences.
Yeah,
Right.
their consequences were because of their own choices, not because God had predetermined that. He said, this would have been fine. This is what I wanted you to do. You decided to go the other way. And I think I want to keep bringing that out because God did not, pre-plan all of this stuff. He's leaving it up to them, and they're deciding to go their own way. which is a principle that, you know, in every age.
Yeah, and
So-
certainly we have that today.
Yeah. So enjoy it. Hopefully you'll see these things. If you have questions, comments, we definitely, like we always say, like to hear those. And we'll see you back here next time as we get close to the end of Jeremiah.
Bye, everybody.